Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Infinity Workforce Solutions Fast Forward webinar series. My name is Steve Kessler, and I'll be hosting the program today. So appreciate y'all taking some time out of your day to join us. I think we've got a really great topic this morning. The topic today is navigating the road ahead, mastering mobile technology in the trucking industry. So I think that's a great topic. And tell you what I'd like for y'all to do. Why don't you jump on the chat and just type in who you are and maybe who you work for and where you're located, so we kind of get a sense of where y'all are out there. And while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce a couple of folks here. I want you all to welcome Mark Rhea. Mark's kind of a regular on our program here. Mark's a truck transportation executive, been in this business for 35 years or more. I've known Mark a long time. Mark's a certified director of safety under the NATME and TXT program. Mark's a licensed CDL and CMV inspector, and is also on the Freight Logistics Advisory Board for the Council of Governments of North Texas, and also on the board at the North Central Texas Interlink. So, Mark, welcome. What do you think about our topic today?
Oh, I can't wait to hear from Mr. John Piper. This technology just kind of makes me dizzy these days. It just keeps coming. I've been, as you said, been in this business a long time, and the technology is coming fast. Some of it works, some of it's maybe a little suspect, but luckily today we've got what I would call a pioneer in the world of mobile communication and telematics and transportation technology that I've worked with for many years. He introduced me to electronic logs, as a matter of fact, and truck tracking. So Mr. John Piper will be very instrumental in trying to get us to understand the values and what's out there in the marketplace today.
Those are kind words, Mark.
Very good. So everybody, let me introduce John. John, like Mark said, is a thought leader in the field of transportation technology and business innovation. He's very passionate about kind of pushing the boundaries and exploring new possibilities out there. He's dedicated his career to helping organizations leverage the power of technology to drive their growth and success. Mark is currently the host of The Road Home, which is a podcast dedicated to making a difference in the lives of, think about 12,000 truck drivers that he reaches every month. John started his career in operations management with First Fleet Inc. in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And the last 20 plus years with Qualcomm, Cloud Software, Skybit, Smart Drive, DBAT Sports, and has now joined Add-On Systems, which is a leading technology software and consulting firm, as the VP of marketing there. John's been instrumental in guiding numerous companies towards digital transformation. He has a deep understanding of emerging technologies and their potential impact on your business. So he's helped clients across the transportation industry harness, the power of artificial intelligence, cloud computing, data analytics, telematics. All those things help you to gain a competitive advantage. John's a native of Kentucky, holds a degree from Western Kentucky University and an MBA from Baylor University. You should also know John is a very sought-after consultant, speaker, and advisor. He's known for his ability to communicate really complex concepts and do that in a relatable and, I'd say compelling manner. So through his work with Add-On Systems, he continues to, shape the future of technology and inspire others to embrace it and seize new opportunities in this digital age. So John, having said all that, I'm going to turn the program over to you. Welcome, John.
Steve, thanks for the warm introduction. Mark Rhea, thank you for those kind words. And you mentioned dizzy when I'm sitting there listening to Steve tell about my background, and I'm like, is that really me? But the bottom line is, man, we've been doing this a long time. We've seen a lot of change, and it's an exciting time to be in the transportation technology sector. And that's what we want to cover. Our short time together this morning, I've seen a lot of evolution and change in our industry. Like Mark mentioned, I worked with, when he was in a VP of operations at a large fleet here in North Texas, introduced electronic communications, GPS, communications to drivers in real rudimentary form, text-based messaging. And we're going to show you the evolution now. And it really is dizzying and confusing to a lot of drivers, fleet operations, safety professionals, and so many more that are tuned into this webinar and that'll be watching on the replay. So let's get started. You know, it's so important to keep drivers connected now. You know, customer service, safety, operations, they want to have their information in real time now. Customer service excellence, a lot of fleets have so much pressure on them to deliver on time every time. We've been talking about it for years. It's a thank you less business. They expect your drivers to be on time, but when they're late, they let you know about it, and that can be a problem. So having that communication through mobile technology is so important for drivers to get ahead of that and let the shippers and operations know what's going on with that load in that particular time. Training and development, company culture, so much more can be delivered now through that mobile experience, unlike never before. And a lot of drivers we don't get to see, but every couple of weeks. A lot of over-the-road drivers are out there for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, sometimes 3, 4 months at a time, versus those LTL or contract dedicated or private fleet drivers. So you have to be thinking in terms of technology that can reach both those drivers that are home each and every night and those that you don't see, but maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Like we've talked, most fleet operations, safety folks, owners, they're getting bombarded. I personally get bombarded with technology solutions for my business each and every day. For folks that want to do work here at Add-On Systems, consult with software and new technology to make our business better, I know the fleets get bombarded as well. So a couple of things to consider here. You know, security. We hear about malware, hacking. You know, it's so important to have a secure network. And when you have all this technology out there connecting to drivers and the tractors, technology installed on the tractor, on the trailer, on the reefer unit, there's big concern that people can get on those networks and maybe adjust your reefer temperature or change it unbeknownst to you, maybe change your speed on your tractor. So we don't hear a lot about that, but it's becoming more and more prevalent as I go around the country and talk to CIOs, CTOs, technology, network administrators, folks like that are concerned about that. So keep that in mind. Some technology solves some of the problems, but not all. You may have a mixed fleet of drivers, and you got to think in terms of, hey, what's going to be the best common denominator, the solution that is going to help all my drivers, or more importantly, how you can customize applications to fit perhaps your over-the-road fleet, perhaps fit your dedicated contract customer fleet, perhaps your dry van fleet versus your refrigerated fleet versus your flatbed fleet or your final mile delivery fleet. Those are all things you need to take into consideration when you're selecting technology. And if any of us have been sitting down with the CFO, typically they go to the last item on that spreadsheet when you're looking at ROI, cost. A lot of times the person writing the check does not consider all the value and really the customer experience versus just the cost. And in today's freight market, no secret, cost is so much more important today than it was just 18 months ago, 24 months ago, when freight volumes were higher and freight rates were higher. So cost is obviously at the top of everybody's awareness. And Steve, I know you mentioned people in the chat. I'm not going to be watching the chat right now, but at the end we'll have Q&A. So as I'm going through here, I like to make this conversational, but we will save the questions till the end, and we'll try to get to most of those here in just a few minutes on the Q&A. So
That's right.
mention of mobile technology, like I mentioned, Mark Ray's a great example. I think it was 1997, 1998. We were working with a fleet he was managing, and it was a very large GPS tracking device and text-based messaging, and that was really it. And everybody thought, wow, how great is this? We can keep up with our drivers. You know, we know where they are once an hour, or if they send in a message, we can kind of see where they are in terms of are they going to make their delivery on time. But there wasn't much integration with safety. You know, electronic logs hadn't become prevalent at that time, but it was a tool. Instead of the drivers having to call in from a payphone, and the young folks here on the webinar today, you might have to Google images of what a payphone looks like, because there aren't any payphones. I think I saw some in a hotel recently, but we all have cell phones now, so it's a lot easier to get a hold of a driver. And then you see a picture of the cell phone there. Once the cell phones and the smartphones became more prevalent, it was easier to get information to the driver, stay connected, made the driver's life so much better versus having to call for dispatch or stay in that truck, stay tethered to that tractor. And we'll talk about the issues of parking here in a minute. But can you imagine being a professional driver waiting for dispatch, and the only way you know you're going to get a dispatch is to go out and check that display, that monochrome display in your tractor every couple of hours while you're maybe trying to get some rest, or you're in a truck stop having dinner or getting a shower. Things have changed, and now we see a lot of tablet base. I've got an iPad here right now. I use a tablet myself, but Android tablets, iPhone tablets, it's just a way to further connect drivers or remote workers, could be maintenance technicians as well, to your business, which is so powerful.
Yes, John, one of the things we learned is obviously your customers want to know where that freight is all the time. And I think one of the things that has emerged is, yes, tracking is important. Where's my freight? Where is it? When's it going to? But how do you convert that into improvement in crash frequency and things that on the safety side has really taken off in the last few years? So it's got multiple values to include. Where's my freight? Is it on time? But that also used correctly can improve crash frequency.
Yeah, Mark, that's a great segue. You know, this is just kind of a slide to get people to think about what's the impact with the technology on our business. And I can't think of a more prolific piece of technology in the last couple of years. I was early, I saw this early on, probably 7-8 years ago, forward-facing cameras and inward-facing cameras. And there's a lot of things, actually, we do here at Add-On Systems as well, where we take all this data, because what we found, Mark, historically is there's so much information in all these silos, these different systems, in the TMS system, in the camera provider usually has their own user interface, and all that data sits over in another system. And then there's a claim system over here. So bringing all that together, using cameras to mitigate risk before it happens, that's the key. You know, everyone has tools now to how you handle a accident, a collision. Hopefully, I hate to talk about it, but it's a necessary part of our business, fatalities. You know,
absolutely.
And I was at a safety meeting down in Dallas with a lot of law enforcement talking about when you're the first responder on a fatality, how you deal with that. And, you know, it's so tough. So we're all about zero fatalities out there. We know that's a stretch goal, but with the camera technology, Mark, you can mitigate risk in advance. You can see certain behavior. You know, John Piper has certain trends driving at 8:30 in the morning versus 8:30 at night. And there's certain triggers now. AI has become a big part of this, artificial intelligence, and tying into other systems in the truck as well with speed, all the data that's on that tractor. And it gives really safety and risk professionals and operations people and ownership really a lot of tools to help coach. And I know Vertical Alliance, Infinity, the platform that you guys provide is all about training and getting ahead of a potential accident. So great points altogether. Logging, I remember when I first started in operations, we had a dedicated contract carriage business. The drivers would be out for 2 or 3 days at a time, very safe drivers. But they would come back, a lot of times at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 8 in the morning. They would kind of catch up their logs on paper. I know the safety professionals don't want me to say that, but that was just a fact. That was back in the mid to late 90s. Nowadays, there was a lot of pushback on electronic logging, mainly from drivers, especially independent contractors that thought, hey, this is going to impact my mileage, which is going to impact my pay. When I first got in trucking, I remember a driver like week 1 said, John, and he patted his wallet on the back of his Wrangler jeans. He was a great driver from Somerset, Kentucky. Said, as long as you don't mess with the driver's pay, you'll be all right in this business. And that's been true. That's been true. When drivers feel like they're not getting paid properly, you will hear about it. Everybody on here knows what I'm talking about. But now the transition to electronic logs has been so positive because now fleets know everyone's on the same playing field. Drivers like it because it's less headache, it's less work. Drivers do not want administrative work. Is that fair to say, Mark?
Absolutely. The elimination of having to do a recap mathematics was a big plus.
Yeah, good stuff. And there's so many technologies out there now. ELDs really brought a lot of new providers to the forefront, and there's a plethora. We don't necessarily recommend which ones you want to use. We can help guide you on that, but there's a lot of great solutions out there. Fleet management software, that's another one that a lot of fleets have used the same platform for many years. They tweak it, they modify it. It's important to have software in your business that can do what you need it to do, and it's simple and effective. One thing that ties into safety is route optimization. A couple things here. There's fleet controlled routing, where a lot of the larger fleets that I work with will send out a Class 8 specific route, potentially even with fuel stops. Like you can see on this display down here, you can see my mouse moving. This route here has a fuel stop, and that's usually tied into fuel optimization, figuring out, using all this data and analytics to figure out, hey, where's the best place to fuel based on my route, based on the cost of the fuel, and it drops it right into the route. The flip side to that is driver controlled routing. There's a thing called app fatigue. And if I showed you my iPhone here, I've got way too many apps from the App Store. I'm a big fan of technology, productivity tools, learning, podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. But when the driver's in control of routing themselves using say Apple Maps, Google Navigation, whatever other, there's many tools out there. They're not necessarily Class 8 specific, might get that driver into an area where, as a safety professional or fleet owner, you do not want that driver to get into. And that's a concern. So make sure you're looking at Class 8 specific navigation tools and productivity tools to not overwhelm your driver and really be in control. There's some things through what we call MDM, mobile device management, where you can lock down the tablet that the driver's using, where they can only use certain apps. And that's something that we recommend wholeheartedly. But if they're using their own smartphone device, certain things you can't control there, especially if they're an independent contractor. Excuse me. Another thing I do want to talk about before I move on is truck parking. Let's go back one, actually. Truck parking, everywhere I go now, is a problem. Everybody talks about truck parking. The federal government cannot fund and build adequate parking. States can't adequately fund and build truck parking. The truck stops are overwhelmed now. You see trucks parked on the shoulders, which is very unsafe. But here's an example. You can see this yellow on the route display here. That's using a calculation to determine that driver is going to run out of hours in that spot. Now, this particular tool, it's a tool from Elios Technologies. The driver could click on there, get points of interest, and look specifically for truck parking. And now drivers can reserve truck parking in advance. So I think a key takeaway here for driver fatigue, driver buy-in to stay working with your fleet is to plan their route in advance so they know where they're going to be able to put their head down at night. You know, driver fatigue, driver health and wellness is a big issue that I'm a proponent of. We talk about it a lot on the Road Home podcast as well. But if a driver's got stress and worry and fear on where they're going to park that night, when they run out of hours, it makes their whole day, their whole, 8, 10, 11 hours driving, they're thinking about that. And that's the last thing you want as a safety professional, is where they're going to park at night. And Mark, I don't know if you've seen any other solutions, but it's a real problem in our industry.
It's a real problem. It's easy to identify and very difficult to solve. So I think there are obviously mobile communication technologies that can at least assist in trip planning and helping the driver. And Steve, I know we've got content on that we can get out to drivers on our system, learning management system, but it's clearly a very important component of trip planning. So
yeah, great points. Technology, telematics has come so far from the early days. Trailer telematics. I just came from the Truckload Carriers Association refrigerated conference, and with driver shortage, some people say we have a driver shortage, some people say we don't, but I think most people think we do. And putting trailers, intermodal trailers on the rail, being able to track not only where that intermodal trailer is, but also the temperatures on that trailer, and maybe even down to the pallet, is becoming very powerful. A lot of shippers want to be able to have that data and measure exceptions. They want to know, hey, when something's wrong, or that fuel tank on that intermodal trailer is running low. Because do you want to leave it up to the railroad to manage your fuel? You want to be able to know, hey, at that next stop, we need to top off or fill up that intermodal fuel tank on that refrigeration unit. Freight tracking, getting down to specifics, with the final mile deliveries and the Amazons of the world. It's amazing, the technology where you can literally click on your phone and figure out where your shipment is down to the box level. And I know we're talking to a lot of truckload type customers and folks in the shipping community, but that's where it's headed, and it's really powerful. Most importantly, shipper visibility. In the old days, that shipper would call dispatch, and dispatch would have to say, I'll call you back, and they'd have to call the driver. Well, not anymore. A lot of times systems, and getting back to the software system, will send information based on that customer and keep that shipper updated in near real time, either through their TMS system, through EDI, electronic data interchange, or other systems through APIs and websites, that gives shippers so much more visibility than they've ever had before. We've seen a big movement to replacing proprietary systems in the truck, old monochrome or even some basic color keyboards, where now fleets can pick and choose best-in-class applications to run their business. They're not, it's kind of like the App Store, Apple, or the Google Play Store and Google, where fleets are picking technology solutions that can mix and match to solve real-world problems. And that's real powerful. If you get on that paradigm shift, that you're not necessarily stuck with one vendor anymore. That was the way it was for many, many years. And still a lot of fleets are working with just one vendor to provide all their telematics solutions. We're seeing now where I think 42% of all drivers have an Apple device now, whereas not too long ago, it was predominantly Android. We see a lot of fleets due to cost go with an Android tablet in the truck. Some of them put Apple tablets in the truck for a variety of reasons, but it gives you flexibility. And a lot of times the smartphone app, whether it's on the tablet that the company provides, it works and feels the same way when you're on your personal device. And that's real powerful. So now the drivers can stay disconnected from the truck. They can also go watch their grandson or their son play a Little League baseball game, or go to the lake knowing they're waiting on a dispatch, and they can check their dispatch from watching the sunset in East Texas, just the same way they can if they're in Northern California. And it gives them a lot of freedom and flexibility to work really the way they want to work. And independent contractors, truck drivers, they like to be independent. That's really why they drive and get out on the open road. A couple things to consider when you're evaluating selecting mobile technology solutions. What problem do you want to solve? Because different people in the organization want to solve different problems. And especially larger fleets, you've got safety involved, you've got finance, you've got operations, you've got ownership. You might have investors. You got all these people involved in making technology decisions. You got to really hone it into what are the top 2 or 3 things you want to change in your business. Compatibility with existing systems. A lot of the customers I deal with today have millions of dollars invested in their platform, their systems. They do not want to yank all that out. They want to add on to it, add some new technology, maybe connect through APIs or some custom integration. Now, some fleets are looking to completely transform their business and yank it out, but that's not something I would necessarily recommend unless you're a really small fleet. Be transparent with your vendor. Just have an open and honest dialogue. A lot of vendors, when they have the sales hat on, you're a little careful on what you want to share with them or vice versa. The more transparent you can be talking with technology vendors, hardware vendors, software vendors, any partner. I really like to use the word partner, because when you're working with a partner, they understand your business, like, and trust them. And I think that's the key to having a successful long-term relationship. And then finally, you can have the greatest technology solution out there, but if the implementation team, especially on the customer side, is not good communicators, they're not on board with working with a partner, it usually takes many people, many hands to get this done. Make sure you have the right people in place and the right expectations. You're setting, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly team calls, and have a good communication. What's worked well for our clients is having a document that is shared amongst both fleet and technology providers, so everyone's on the same page. And that's much like a Google Sheet. It's more sophisticated than that, but everyone that understands Google knows when you make changes to it in real time, everyone sees the changes and everyone's on the same page. None of this emailing back and forth, those types of things. So very important having the right team in place when you're making a transition in any type of technology. Some of the challenges that I've seen, and it's just human nature, whether you're working with a sports team or working with school administrators, whenever there's change coming, as human beings, most of us are resistant to change. So be prepared for that. Employee training. A lot of fleets I've dealt with, they've been doing it the same way for 10, 15, 20 years. And getting that mindset, I'll just remind you, Sears, Blockbuster Video. There's companies out there, JCPenney. They kind of did it the same way over and over. And a lot of their leadership would say, that's the way we've always done it, and it's worked for us. Well, how many of you have gone out to Blockbuster Video and rented a video lately? You get my point. Data security, make sure that you have the things in place to protect your data, especially your vendor. When your vendor is grabbing data from your system, make sure that that's protected, something that probably a lot of you have not thought about, but they're bringing your data into their systems and vice versa. Something to really consider moving forward. Troubleshooting, how do you address all these challenges is so important. I do want to share just a quick anecdotal story. A company called Canby Transportation, approximately 700 trucks in South Sioux City, Nebraska, refrigerated carrier. We're with one of those proprietary systems for 20 plus years. And they had some 3G wireless concerns. They were going to have to upgrade their devices on the trucks anyway. So they made a switch. Our team worked with them closely, and they just said, "Hey, we're all in this move forward." And and I don't recommend this to anybody, but they transitioned almost 700 trucks in about 8 weeks. Once the groundwork was set, and some of those previous slides I talked about, they had the right implementation team in place. The communication was phenomenal, weekly, if not every couple days. And it is possible if you got the right mindset and the right buy-in. And the beautiful thing with any fleet is once you build a foundation, a solid foundation of the technology stack that you want to run, you can add on to it. It's like building a good foundation on a house or commercial building. You can always add on to it. You can modify it. You can enhance what you're doing. And that's what we see a lot of successful companies do. Technology. I personally have a Tesla Cybertruck ordered. Now, a pickup truck. This is a big Tesla Cybertruck. We're seeing so much change. Mark and I had a chance to visit Kodiak Robotics down south of Dallas. They're a Silicon Valley-based company that's doing some of the autonomous truck. We're seeing so much out there. So at what point, do you maximize your technology to impact your business? There's that cost, value add relationship. But the point of this slide is there's so much out there. There's so much future thinking technology. I know when I poll customers for the over-the-road Class 8 trucks, not a whole lot of them are ordering or thinking about 100% EVs, but maybe there's a mix there, maybe a yard truck, might be some technology that they can weave in that impacts, their business in a positive way. Well, Mark, I know, Steve, I ran through that fairly quickly, and the goal here is to not really solve everyone's problems today, but let them know that we're a resource, both here at Vertical Alliance, and I'm willing to help. But I think I can see in the chat box quite a few comments, questions, and I know we had some questions prior to the webinar. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you guys for some Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, John. Excellent information. We do actually have some questions here, and I'll just start here and pose a few of them to you. We're talking about mobile communication, and someone's asking about, tell us about cameras in mobile communication. There's a lot of information, a lot of triggered events, what's relevant, what's not. And there's a driver coaching part to this too. And someone is actually curious about how that might play out in lawsuit discovery. So I'm curious to hear your comments about that.
Yeah, great question. And that's really at the top of everyone's mind that is either considering cameras, has cameras, or some of the liability is if you don't have cameras, you're kind of up to the he said, she said. So we're in kind of a unique situation that I haven't seen in my 25-year history in technology, where a lot of folks on the litigation side would say, and the risk side would say, if we have at least a forward-facing camera, we know what happened, and if it's our fault, we know what we need to do to either settle it or how to go to court, versus extend out a potential lawsuit or a settlement for months on months. And having an inward facing camera, historically, a lot of fleets we're concerned that, oh, if I have a driver facing in on John, John doesn't necessarily want to have a camera on me all day while I'm driving. But what they find is it makes the fleet safer. It makes John safer. And if the message is that you can return John home safely to his or her family, that is so valuable. And that's the message. It's not about beating up the driver that, hey, we caught you, eating a Big Mac going down the road again, or drinking a big gulp. It's about reinforcement, improving the situation. And those will trigger some events, to your question, and it's a coaching opportunity. So, we just saw the last major of the year was the British Open. All those professional golfers have coaches. They have video they're using to get better. Tiger Woods has a coach with them all the time. They're seeing video to get better, not to tell them that they stunk it up, but everybody's using video and coaching. So why not use it in the trucking industry? And that final part of the two-part question about litigation, nuclear verdicts is a big deal. There's a lot of concern around the country, depending on what state you're in, what jurisdiction you're in, that, there's been verdicts 20, 30, 40, $100 million recently. And as an industry, we know that the truck drivers are the safest drivers really in North America. But when they are involved in a collision, it's 80,000 pounds. It usually doesn't go well. And everybody wants to point fingers at the big truck, big truck bad. So I really believe camera technology, leveraging inward and outward facing cameras, and some of them now have side cameras, multiple cameras, up to maybe 8 cameras surrounding the truck.
Yeah.
It's going to prove to be a great solution for risk mitigation, risk management, improving driver behavior and safety long-term.
I absolutely agree. I think, Mark and I hear from quite a few trucking companies, and most everybody today has embraced the cameras. Some are still a little concerned about the inward facing ones, but there are plenty of things that we've heard back where that in-facing camera made all the difference in the world too. So, but you're absolutely dead on. If you're capturing that video, if you're not using that as an opportunity to train your drivers, you're really kind of missing the whole value of the cameras to begin with. And certainly that video footage is something that can easily be used as a training tool. We have quite a few of our clients that use that in our system and make sure that people get to see those events. Try to move on here in our time frame. Another question that came up, someone's asking, do these technologies work with mobile communication? And they're speaking about lane departure, crash avoidance, speed management. Wonder if you could speak a little bit to that thought.
Yeah, great question, Steve. Hey, I do want to answer this one live question that ties back to cameras and what we're talking about right here. Sonia asked, how important is it for drivers not to block their cameras? Will it affect case and litigation? Well, a lot of the camera technology
I know who that
will trigger through AI that the camera's been blocked. Drivers will put either a hat over it or tape or things like that, and the system will recognize that and really alert operations dispatch what's going on. So that would be a problem. So you want to catch that in advance if you're in operations safety risk, because it would not be a good thing if your driver's involved in a collision and it was found that the driver was negligent because they put the something blocking over that camera. But I would always defer to an attorney in that. I'm not an attorney, but great question there, Sonia. Yes, Steve, a lot of the camera systems are so smart now. They have their own telematics built in, and they are talking to the cloud already. They're grabbing stuff from the tractor, the engine, and they're starting to talk to multiple systems. There's all kinds of safety, collision avoidance, radar, LiDAR on the trucks now, that these smart camera systems are starting to talk to and get notifications. I know now where if a driver's going down the road and they put on their left blinker to get into the other lane, that camera system knows that, hey, the left blinker's on, I'm not crossing the center line. So it won't trigger, hey, John crossed the center line, beep, 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 and beep at me and beep, let the risk management team and the safety team know. So yeah, it's kind of like becoming a smart truck. All the technology, it can get kind of busy in there, but all the OEMs are trying to start to work with each other, and the telematics providers are starting to try to grab data off that ECM, that electronic control module on the tractor, to really report what's really going on in real time with that driver.
Great, thanks. Another question here. Obviously, this person is here in Texas, says it's hot here in Texas. What's new with tire pressure and wheel temp sensors? Know anything about that?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm a defensive driver. I had an accident when I was about 18 in a zooped up Camaro back in Kentucky, and from that point on, I started driving a whole lot slower and a lot more defensive. So the reason I bring all that up is when I'm going down the highways in Texas, or I was in Utah last week. This time of year, I'm seeing, what old school truckers call gators, or parts of tires coming on the road, and it's a problem. It's a real problem for that trucker that just had a blowout. And I saw one just the other day that started catching fire. I don't know if it's a combination of the tire, the brake overheated, but when it becomes 100 degrees and above in Texas, Phoenix, Arizona is like 115. You got to be really careful. And these tire inflation and tire inflation notification systems are so important to keep tires inflated properly, because I'm not a scientist, but I know when it gets hot out there, the inflation expands, and when it gets cold, it contracts. And having proper inflation is so important for a couple of reasons: safety, but also your fuel mileage. Having proper inflation, and the cost of Mark, what's the cost of a new trailer tire these days? It's gone way out there.
Yeah, it's $500 or more. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you have a blowout, and then the service call, I mean, it's expensive. So tire inflation systems, a lot of fleets are getting those spec'd out when they order trailers, obviously tractors, but I think it's a great technology, great tool. And they're starting to talk to other systems as well, notify the driver of the exception, even back to dispatch, that, hey, that left inner tire on that trailer number A6759 looks like it may be leaking air. Let's take a look at that and be proactive, which could really save a life.
Great. John, there's a question that just popped up on the screen. You may have seen it here from George. He's asking, any thoughts on back-end and onboard technology and data helping with path to decarbonization?
I was trying to multitask and look at the question on the screen as you were saying. Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, it says, any thoughts on back-end and onboard technology and data helping with a path to decarbonization? I guess that's more about, the efficiency of the truck and what, to reduce the carbon footprint.
Yeah, great question.
We're moving towards electronic.
Yeah, great question. What's amazing, Steve, is, I talk to a lot of drivers, especially with the Road Home podcast. And I always want to hear what the drivers are experiencing. And just the MPGs alone in our traditional diesel type tractors have gotten so much better than they were, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I'm hearing things like 9, 10 miles per gallon, which in the past, if it got over 6 miles per gallon, you thought, wow, what are they doing? That's awesome. Yeah. And there's some things, EV, I think personally is really going to take a lot of time for the big truck. it makes a total sense for local, like waste haulers, also natural gas. I think natural gas, hydrogen is starting to get some talking points, but I mean, to run an EV, here's an example. I've got a friend that provides EV charging stations for industrial parks, or if you have a large facility and you want to have some EV charging stations for your four-wheel vehicles or your trucks or whatever, he can provide those. He had an industrial facility buy 5 of those, and then it came back that the electric grid could only support 1 of them. So I think that's the challenge we have right now, supplying the electricity for the EV space to reduce the carbon footprint. And then secondly, where's that electricity coming from? Is it coming from still a coal-fired production plant, natural gas-fired? That's all a big challenge, and that's really something that we'll have to let our state legislators, probably Washington, handle. But like I said, I've rented Teslas before. I've got a Tesla Cybertruck ordered. So I like the technology. Some people are a little scared of it. But we'll see where this goes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Another question here. Someone's saying, I hear a lot of talk about smart trailers. What is that exactly? Can you discuss that a little bit?
Certainly.
They're talking about, brake systems and lamp outage sensors and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a combination of just having really an electronic control module on that trailer that has all these variable sensors. It could even have some cameras. There's now, especially on dry vans, there's cameras that you can put inside the trailer, to know if, hey, is the trailer completely empty? Was there forklift damage? The technology has gotten so phenomenal. Tying in the tire sensors, the pressure tire inflation systems, all this type of technology. And then you tie in, a refrigeration unit. That's when it gets really smart, where you can control that refrigeration unit remotely. You can get diagnostic codes remotely. So now think about just not too many years ago, Steve, you would have to dispatch a Thermo King or a Carrier service truck out, say, we're here in Texas, so I'll just say out Highway 80 out there east of Dallas on a Friday night, just to troubleshoot a reefer unit. Now you might be able to see those fault codes as a
on your phone,
vice president of maintenance, right from your smartphone through some technology. So that's really where it's headed, smart trailer. And I think we're going to see more and more technology around the trailers as we move forward.
No, that's great. Here's one that I think is a very common question. Someone's asking about, implementing this kind of technology. And the question is, can we test the technology to see if it works? And second, follow-up behind that is, what should you expect from your vendor to support this technology?
Yeah, most technology vendors that I've worked with or partnered with will support what we would call, or what I term as, a pilot test. It might be a production type contract, but there's some language in there that says, hey, we're going to pilot, say, with 10 drivers or 20 drivers or 5 trucks or 8 trucks or 10 trailers, whatever it might be. Usually there's an investment there. I mean, one thing I learned in economics is there's no such thing as a free lunch. So don't expect a free pilot, because, there's time on both parties. Even if it's quote unquote free, there's time and effort involved. Usually there's a little skin in the game from both parties, but that's a great way to see if it works for your business. It might work for a very large private fleet, private shipper. I won't mention any names, but it might not work for your, 90 truck you know, 110 reefer trailer business. So yes, and as long as the expectations are set properly, I mentioned, I think in one of the previous slides, make sure you have the right implementation team, and that's really both parties. Communication is key, and really set those pilot expectations up front where, hey, here's the 2 or 3 problems we want to solve with this technology. And if we do solve this problem, it's a no-brainer. You know, we'll spend X dollars a month per driver or X dollars a month per tractor or trailer to solve this problem. And the ROI is just front and center clear. So
absolutely.
definitely.
You know, you mentioned, John, part of the implementation thing requires that there be some education and training take place. And I think that's something that's pretty important with all of the technology that we've been talking about here. If people don't understand how to use it properly, when they do use it properly, it works like it's supposed to. If they're not using it correctly or don't understand how to use it, then there's frustration and perhaps they abandon something like that. So any comments about that?
Certainly. Yeah, it's kind of like going to a great restaurant. You know, people don't necessarily talk about the great meal over and over and over again, but if somebody has a bad meal there, you hear about it. And that's what we see a lot in trucking technology. You know, technology just, for the most part, works until a driver or somebody in operations has a bad experience or there's some downtime. So yeah, it's just so important to make sure it's right and that it works for both parties. But one thing we've seen too, Steve, and this ties right in with the Infinity platform, is video-based training. You know, a lot of the drivers now have a tablet or a smartphone available, and through certain tools, you know, with the new technology, there can be some training videos put together that are supported on a mobile platform or a phone or a computer, and you know, kind of a nice little plug for Infinity here is through your platform, there can be a training platform and a modular-based training built to support some of the new technology, especially for the drivers that can't be in the office for a 2-day training course, or maybe do some modular-based training that reinforces it in short increments. You know, I like 4 to 7 minute short videos. Some people might say even shorter than that, or a series of videos. So yeah, great comment.
Great. Here's a question that just popped up on the screen here, John. Maybe you'll address this, maybe it's something you'll take private, but the question is, what camera recording devices would you recommend? What system works the best with alerting and sending recordings of collisions, accidents, and other everyday truck issues?
Yeah, there's so many out there, and it really, you know, what served me well and consulting with clients in the past, Steve, is really having a conversation, understand what problems they're trying to solve. There's no way I could recommend a specific camera solution without knowing exactly what they're trying to solve, perhaps their budget, what their existing systems are, you know, their ELDs. There's so many variables. So yeah, appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I'm not going to say publicly any camera providers, but there's a lot I've worked with in the past, and there's probably 4 to 10 different camera providers that I would feel comfortable recommending and working with. So we could definitely take that one offline. There's a lot of great solutions out there.
Yeah, I think that might be a question. The person that posed that question, maybe to reach out to you and have a more closed conversation about that. Here's another question, and we're getting close to an hour in time frame here, folks, and we try to keep this at less than an hour. But I think it's important to talk a little bit about return on investment here. And I know you've touched on it a little bit, John, but I think things top of mind are, is it going to have a favorable impact on insurance? Could it have a good impact on crash frequency, fuel consumption? Those are all big, huge expenses for trucking. And I wonder if you could share your thoughts about how that's could improve and provide a positive return, or at least savings of money spent.
Certainly. And like I mentioned before, whenever there's an ROI put together, or I hear it all the time, chief technology officer, VP of IT or operations, or the CFO, talks in terms of, hey, we're trying to do our best to cost justify this. Real simple cost justification is for, every $20 you spend, you get $30 back. How many times will you go through the ATM and put 20 in and get 30 back? You'll do it all day long. But a lot of the cost justifications on technology are what I call soft justifications, or there's an X factor that you can't always measure. One example, and the first thing you mentioned was insurance. A lot of larger fleets I work with are self-insured up to a certain level, and they don't really know. When you have, say, cameras and other safety technology in your truck, you can't always say, you know what, it definitely saved us, 4 major preventable collisions, and maybe it saved us 1 fatality, because it never happened. And those are some things you got to factor in, like, how does it balance out our driver satisfaction? If we're able to send out a video to our drivers every week, say from the owner or the safety department head or their specific dispatcher, and say, hey, look in that camera and say, hey, John, thank you so much for driving for XYZ Trucking. We really appreciate all you do for us, and look forward to seeing you when you get back to the office. We're going to have a barbecue soon here, in September, or whatever that might be. You can't ever measure that message maybe save that driver from leaving and go on to, right behind another truck that says, call 1-800 and join us, because drivers can go other places. So there's a lot of savings there, Steve, that you can't always measure. But then there's hard savings too when it comes to fuel, when it comes to maintenance. Predictive AI and maintenance is becoming a big thing as well.
Yeah.
Driver satisfaction.
You think about CSA, it could have a positive impact on that. It's hard to measure that with dollars and cents, but certainly that can help with your driver recruitment. It can help with your insurance. It can help with, shippers wanting to do business with you. There's a lot of impact there. It's a little hard to put dollars on it, but certainly there's return on investment there in a positive way.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend when fleets deploy, say, new technology or enhance their existing technology, let that sales team at the trucking company share that message. That's a positive message that you're investing in your business. Share that message with that shipper community, because I think a lot of times that shipper looks at trucking companies as a commodity, and they shouldn't. I know not all shippers do that, so don't quote me on this. But when you can have that shipper relationship with the trucking company and you're working together for safety and efficiency, that's a value add. And that shipper may not ever say, you know what, we were going to give that lane of business to another carrier, but you guys did all this great stuff with technology. We're going to keep you. They might not ever tell you that, but I promise you it makes a difference.
Very good. John, we are just right at an hour into our program, and we always promise people we'll try to keep it short. And I'm sure there are quite a lot more questions, but if you wanted to kind of summarize real quickly, and then we'll let everybody get back to their busy lives.
Yeah. This has been great, Steve, Mark. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity. This is something that's been my mantra even before I got into trucking. Be open to change, try new ideas, new ways of thinking is so important. And just say, what if? And maybe it becomes that pilot test that we talked about earlier. Let's try this. It sounds good, or it sounds like it won't work. Let's just try it. Be open to change, communicate early and often, have patience. I've worked on projects over the last really 3 decades that everybody gets excited about and wants to deploy within 90 days. And guess what? Something happens, something changes, pandemic hits, whatever it might be. Have some patience. Have some patience is key. Get drivers buy-in early and often. I know 7, 8, 9 years ago, for example, the camera technology, it made total sense from a risk perspective, insurance, ownership perspective. But guess what? When ownership started talking to drivers in the break room or picked up the phone and called and said, hey, we're thinking about putting in these cameras. Keep in mind, this is 8, 9 years ago. The driver said, hey, I'm going to quit. That's not for me. So timing is everything. Executive sponsorship and technology change is inevitable. Things can and will change, no doubt about it. And again, appreciate the opportunity, Steve, Mark, everybody there at Infinity. And I look forward to doing some more collaborations with you and your team and your customers in the future.
Absolutely, John. Thank you very much. It was some kind of eye-opening information here for me today, and I do appreciate your comments. So thank you very much. Same to you, Mark, as always. And our guests out there, if you have some interest in knowing what we do here at Infinity Workforce Solutions, feel free to reach out to us, and we will do our best to tell you what we do here and how we might be able to help you implement some of this technology that we've been talking about this morning.
So I would just say, don't try to figure it all out yourself. I know it's a lot of confusion, and I would highly recommend getting a hold of somebody like Mr. Piper to say, okay, here, set me straight on some of all this technology, and I think you'll get an answer from someone who understands our industry and understands the reality of getting it into the cab of a truck.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm more than happy to answer questions post-call. You can text me or call me at that number, 214-556-8059, or my email, jpiper@addonsystems.com. More than happy to help. And y'all be safe out there. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for all of you joining us today, and look forward to the next webinar. So keep an eye on your inbox and look for our invitation. So once again, appreciate everybody being here. Thank you all much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.